Today, I'm gonna be putting together a tier list of all the new GPUs in 2025. Before we do though, I just wanna let you guys know this tier list is actually set up for the Toasty Bros main channel. Matt and Jackson did a tier list of their own, and that video is coming out on the 20th at 3 p.m. So definitely go take a look at that one after you go see this one, because this one's gonna come out a little bit before then. But yeah, this one's mine because I just was interested to do one myself, and it sounds like fun. So we're gonna go ahead and get straight into it. So we're gonna be starting off with the Intel GPUs that are, of course, the new gen. So that's gonna be the Intel Arc B570 and B580. So starting off with the B570, honestly, there's nothing necessarily bad with the B570, but I feel like for the price point, especially with B580 coming down in price, I feel like the B580 is a much better buy. So 10 gigs of VRAM, it's definitely slower than even the entry-level cards from AMD and Nvidia. So I think I'm gonna go with D tier. It's not a terrible card, especially if you can get it on a good price, but just for the price point and the fact that the B580 exists, I'm going with D tier. And this, of course, is also going to cover where I put them in each tier. So the closer they are to the actual letter is the higher up in that category that they're at. So just keep that in mind. But B580, I'm gonna put that one in, it's kind of tough to say because I like the B580, but I think personally, if I was buying a GPU, I think I would probably potentially look at the Nvidia or AMD equivalent GPUs, just for the sole fact that it is one of those more popular manufacturers. So I'm gonna put them at like top of B tier. I think, especially now that they're back down in price, closer towards like the 250 to 260 mark. I think like 260 is where they're normally sitting at. It's not a bad option, and you know, if you like the idea of trying something new and you want to save some extra money that way, it's not a bad idea. The only reason why you could potentially sway this over the other ones is because of the 12 gigs of VRAM, but at the end of the day, VRAM isn't everything, and I think the other options might be a little better. So 3056 gig. This one's kind of tough because we use the 3056 gig here a lot. I'm not the most hyped up person about this card. Honestly, if I'm buying a card under $200, I think I'm gonna go ahead and just buy used because that's a really low price for a graphics card. Probably gonna go like D tier. I'm not as much of a fan as Matt and Jackson are with the card. Let's just say that. So it's gonna go D tier. 5050 is F tier. I think the 5050 is just overpriced for what it is. If it was a 3056 gig replacement, although it does require power, if it was like $40 cheaper, because it's like around like 250, 260 right now, I would 1,000,000% spend the extra 40, 50 bucks for the 5060, which is nearly like 33 to 40% faster than 5050 if I remember, based on the amount of CUDA cores and all that stuff that it has inside of it. I think the 5050 is just in a weird spot, kind of like the 3058 gig was, where it's just like spend the extra money at that point. I know there's use cases for certain budgets, but the 5050 just doesn't make sense for where it's at right now in its price category. So 5060, here we go. This is entering the more popular ones now. The 5060, man, I gotta say, I know it gets a lot of hate, but I'm kind of on the aspect of going that here's my thing. The 4060 is a decent card. I have friends that own the 4060 and they have no problems playing any game they want. I know plenty of people in the community that run the 4060, and even people that are buying the 5060. It's just the most affordable yet well-performing card for 1080p gaming. And I know a lot of people don't like 1080p anymore, but there's still a use case for it. And if you are on you know, those more popular titles like CS and Valorant and Fortnite and things like that, you can absolutely run this card in 1440p with upscaling and you'd be just fine. So I still think there's a use case for it. It's affordable enough for a lot of people, and I think the 5060 is fine for now. I mean, 12 gigs of VRAM would be ideal, but I'm gonna go with like, I might get some I'm gonna go with like I'm gonna go a little bit above the B580 because I prefer the 5060 over that, and I think it's still a fine value. So 5060 Ti 16 gig, I think those are around like $430 if I remember. And the 16 gig 5060 Ti is decent. I think if I'm buying a budget Nvidia card, although this really isn't budget anymore, this is the one I would buy. The 8 gig, at that point, you might as well get the 16 gig 9060 XT. So I'm actually kind of going out of order here, but I'm gonna go C tier for the 5060 Ti's 8 gig. It's okay. I'm gonna put the 16 gig above that. Yeah, I'm gonna put the 5060 Ti 16 gig above that. I think it's a C tier card overall because in this price category, if you're gonna be aiming for the 8 gigabyte card for the 5060 Ti, I would get the 9060 XT 16 gig because it's an objectively better value for the price that they're selling it at. And then if you're comparing it to the 16 gig model, you're coming up on 5070 level pricing, and at that point, I just wouldn't even recommend it. So I'm gonna put them in a weird spot right now just because of their pricing. I think if they were more competitive with AMD, it'd be a different story, because I think the card's fine itself, especially the 16 gig 5060 Ti, but the value for its direct competitor just is not there. 5070, I'm gonna go A tier. I think it's a fantastic card for 12 gig 1440p gaming. The 5070 and the 70 series from Nvidia has always been a sweet spot. I own a 4070 Ti. I absolutely love mine. No problems playing any game whatsoever in 1440p at 240 hertz. The 5070 is probably really close to that performance since it's the newer gen. It has the upscaling tech and all that good stuff. And it's 12 gigs of VRAM, and you can very commonly find these for around like 550 to 600 now, depending on the model that you want to, kind of ball out on. So I think it's, it's an MSRP pretty much now, and it's not a bad card. No complaints there with the 5070. So it's an A tier card. I think you can't go wrong with it, especially if you want Nvidia. So that's kind of that. And I would be picking the 5070 and 5070 Ti over the regular 9070 from AMD. It's direct competitor. So that's kind of where I have it set there. 5070 Ti, it's kind of tough to say because it is a pretty big price jump. But I think performance-wise, this is probably my favorite Nvidia card from the lineup. So I'm gonna put it in higher A tier because it is a nicer card. It is an objectively good performance increase from the regular 5070. It's $800-ish depending on the model you get and everything like that. If you can get it around the $800 price point, it is gonna be a nice future-proof GPU. And compared to the 5080 that it's right underneath, I think it's much cheaper and it's very close in terms of performance that it honestly makes the 5080 a hard sell. So 5070 Ti is my favorite Nvidia GPU and the one that I would upgrade to if I was, looking at any of these. So that's gonna be where it sits, top of A tier. 5080 and 5090, almost done with the Nvidia GPU, you guys. But 5080, I don't even really consider the 5090 as a GPU I would consider buying. I would more so look at the 5080 when I'm planning high-end builds. So the 5080, of course, it doesn't draw as much power. It isn't the fastest on the planet like the 5090 is, but it's very, very good still. And I think people that buy have no issues with it whatsoever. So we're gonna go bottom of B tier because I think you can save more money and just get the 5070 Ti. It's not the best of the best, but if you don't want to spend 5090 level pricing, I think it is the best for most people out there. I've had plenty of friends that want the best and I just tell them to get the 5080 and they're happy. So I think B tier is where it can sit comfortably. 5090 is gonna go bottom of C tier, because you have to make a case that the 5090 is the fastest consumer card on the planet, but the fact that it's just like ungodly expensive for a PC build, it consumes a lot of power, and most people aren't playing in 4K as is. So I think the 5080 and 5070 Ti are just fine for 1440p high refresh rate. So I feel like the 5090 is just like a flex at this point, and it just doesn't make much sense unless you are doing more than just gaming. I don't think the 5090 makes sense at all for nearly every single gamer out there. So Matt and Jackson and Zach made this tier list. I'm not really sure exactly why they put 7000 series Ryzen in it because these cards were released far before 2025. So I'm just gonna go ahead and quickly rank all of these. 7800 XT, I think it's still a great card if you pick it up for really cheap, under $430, I'd say. And these can be used as well if you really wanted to. 7600, I would put right above the B570 because it's definitely a better card for the probably similar price point if you buy it used. 7600 XT, I'm not the biggest fan of that card. I never have been. I feel like it's not powerful enough to utilize the 16 gigs of VRAM. So that's going in F tier. Honestly, I'm actually gonna put that below the 5050. I do not like that card at all. I've never recommended it and I've never even built with it just because I don't think it's a good value. 7700 XT, solid value, especially if you can find used. I would say this can go in C tier. I think it's still a decent pickup, especially if you get a decent price on it. But at the end of the day, I would just get the 9060 XT 16 gig. So it's actually going down to D tier because I don't think it's worth picking up any more new. 7900 XT, you could used to be able to find these, especially during the GPU shortage. They were actually pretty commonly found for like 750. 20 gigs of VRAM, still a really good card from AMD. It's gonna go in D tier. I just don't think it makes any sense buying now. And if you can find the XTX, I think they're like $900 to $1,000. It's still not worth it. I think it's definitely the most powerful card still from AMD, but it might be harder to find nowadays. So I'm gonna go like C tier, and then 9060 XT 16 gig is gonna be our first S tier graphics card on this list because, man, for $370 or so, the value that it has for a budget GPU is insane because you can play 1440p. It outperforms every other card in its price segment, and it kind of just, I made a video about this a few weeks ago about how it's just so much better of a value compared to used cards on the market. It is objectively the S tier GPU if you're especially wanting to build around $1,000 gaming PC. If you can squeeze this into the budget, it is so worth it. I promise you it is, because it's a great card. So the 9060 XT 8 gig, I would just have to say, I mean, especially if you can find it for like under 300 bucks, I think it's a fine card. I mean, especially if you're wanting, you know, just a nice entry point into the gaming space. It's kind of similar, and I have the same ideas with it with the 5060. So I'm gonna put it a little bit above the 5060. Actually, we're gonna go a little bit below. Yeah, I find it hard to recommend this one, put it higher on the list because of the fact that the 16 gig model is only $80 more expensive, and that jump is worth it every time, in my opinion. So it's gonna go right there. Nothing objectively wrong with the card, especially if it's under $300 and there's like a $100 price point difference in the 8 and the 16 gig, especially if you're playing the easier to run titles in 1080p. You can definitely save the money there, but future proof wise, I think the 16 gig is definitely still where it's at. We got the XT. This is gonna go hand in hand with the 5070 Ti. I still probably would end up doing the 5070 Ti from Nvidia, but the 9070 XT, this is like hand in hand. I couldn't even really tell you which one I would choose because they're like neck and neck for me, whichever one I found a better deal on. But I mean, I've been hearing updates and driver updates and stuff like that, really pushing some more performance out of the 9070 XT. So, you know, if you're fine with going Team Red, I think it's a fantastic pickup, especially if you can get a good deal on it. The problem with it is that the MSRP is supposed to be like $600, but you can't find the $600 9070 XT anywhere really. So if it was closer to that, it would be above the 5070 Ti, but I think objectively the 5070 Ti is gonna take the cake for me. And then the regular 9070, up until recently, I've kind of stopped taking a look at them to be purchased because I found that the price difference between the 9070 XT and the regular one wasn't that drastically different. I'm gonna put it at top of B tier because I think I would still pick it up over the 7800 XT. And I'd say it's kind of right in between there. I think the 5070 is one I consider. If you want the 16 gigs of VRAM, if your VRAM is important to you, then it's definitely a better pickup than the 5070, I think, but I think it's still slightly more expensive. So that's where it's gonna go. That's my tier list right there for you guys. It's a pretty nicely laid out tier list in my opinion. You could argue that some of these could be moved up to S tier, but I'm pretty harsh on a lot of these cards. So, I mean, I'd even be okay with moving the 5070 Ti or the 5070 up to S tier like this. I mean, honestly, I just love these 4 cards. These are the main 4 cards that I'm building with every single time I plan a PC build now. It's kind of like the sweet spot. You have the high-end GPUs, but they're not too high-end. And then you have, you know, your more budget-oriented GPUs if you're looking for a really good deal for your money. So price performance is kind of where my mind sits a lot of the time, and these are the 4 things that do it. You could stretch a little bit on the 5070 Ti, but that's for your high-end gamers. So that's pretty much gonna wrap up my tier list. Let me know how you guys would do yours differently, and be sure to check out that Toasty Bros video coming to the channel, our main channel, on the 20th. It's gonna be a good one, and I'm sure you guys are gonna get a kick out of Matt and Jackson's tier list because they definitely have some conflicting opinions that most people don't have. So thanks for watching, Dean, if you all did, and we'll see you guys next week. Peace.